So welcome to IPC Apex Expo here in 2025. Every year we are very fortunate to interview the leading lights of the IPC Trade Association. And we always start, of course, with its president, Dr. John Mitchell. Good to see you again, John.
Thanks for having me, Trevor.
Okay. So the thing that's on everybody's lips at the moment, of course, our concern is what's happening with global supply chains and some of the political stuff that's happening here in the United States. And you actually recently made a statement that said that supply chains are established, optimized and trusted. Relocating them can be costly and slow, posing risks to quality and reliability. So my question is, how badly is this affecting the EMS industry?
So right this moment, still not terribly badly, but probably the largest impact we're seeing today is that because of all this uncertainty, people are just more reserved. They're holding back.
Yes.
Businesses, as a general rule, really abhor inconsistency. And so with either tariffs or the threat of tariffs or having to figure out how to move your supply chain, all of that just is lack of consistency. And so businesses are, especially EMS businesses, are struggling to figure out what are the impacts of this? Because a lot of, especially as you think about larger EMS companies, multinationals, this is drastically impacting their lives.
Yes.
And
these things don't happen overnight, do they? I mean, they take time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we saw in Trump 1.0 where there were tariffs, there's some lag for the impact to be felt, but it was felt.
Okay. So I'm going to go in more depth into this particular issue with tariffs with Chris Mitchell, who's your
Chris Mitchell's great.
government relations chap. But my next question really is an IPC one, and that is, with all of the trade disputes that are going on with China, is it making it more difficult to run a global trade association?
I could see why people might think that, but with the electronics industry, so many companies are multinational, and really a lot of the things that IPC does in terms of its standardization, education, training programs, et cetera, working with advocacy groups, all of that is still required. And so standards are like the common language. And so we have, even though there are these tensions, and have been for some time, these tensions between, especially the US and China, but China and other places, China's still very active in IPC. We have hundreds of volunteers still working on standards, and those are multinational standards. And for the industry to continue to move, we need participation from everywhere that builds electronics.
Right. But they are making some moves to do some standards of their own, but they're not really impacting what you're doing. We
haven't seen an impact. In fact, we've seen support actually from the government of our standards as well as individuals in China.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. So in addition to, you recently added some talented individuals to your board of directors. You brought in some people from Bosch and
Jabil. Recently we brought LG. So lots of important companies that are getting more engaged with IPCs from a board perspective. Yes.
Right. And are they helping to obviously plan or forge the future of shape of IPC?
Of course. So the way IPC works, we're a nonprofit in the U.S. and we act like a nonprofit pretty much everywhere in the world. The board gives and sets the strategic direction. And our board tries to represent the membership of the organization. And so we look and test that. It's never going to be perfect, but it's pretty diverse in terms of, you've got big companies and small companies. You've got companies from all different regions. You have companies across the entire ecosystem of the electronics industry. And so we're taking all of that input and they help set the strategic direction. They also make sure that we're fiscally operating properly as well. So that helps us as we bring up different areas that we look to investigate or to invest in. Then the board gets to sound off and saying, yes, we think you should do that, or we'll approve funds for that. Right.
Okay. One of these areas that you're investing in, I believe, is into more data and reporting. Can you elaborate on that?
So the board has, as you were talking about earlier, the world is a much more complex place, and it's constantly changing. And so we're making investments to better allow us to serve the industry in that regard. So we're making investments in data, as you mentioned. We're trying to make sure we can gather and provide good information, not just for the industry, but also to policymakers, so that governments and policymakers around the world can make better decisions, informed decisions as they go forward. In addition to the data and information, we're investing in communications. We're trying to make sure that the world understands that electronics are the resource for every industry. You know, just like water is necessary for life, fossil fuels generated progress, electronics are now the resource for innovation in whatever industry, in whether it's aerospace or automotive, whether it's AI or agriculture. Electronics are there and they're critical to this. So we're trying to communicate that and try to make sure that those industries, those governments, those policymakers really understand how important the electronics industry is to them, as well as the kinds of policies that they can do to support or help their other, those other industries through electronics.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so in addition to the people you've added to the board, you've also brought in Devin Iyer for the advanced packaging community.
Yes.
But I don't really see a lot of advanced packaging represented on the show floor here at Apex. Why is that?
So Apex is at its heart Apex is 3 shows. So you have the expo and Apex, the show floor, if you will. A lot of that is, most of it is actually equipment manufacturers that are helping serve a lot of that industry, including advanced packaging. We have other events that happen around the world that are focused specifically on advanced packaging. Devin's helping to lead that, and we also partner with other associations in which he has been invited to be a keynote speaker along with our Chief Technology Officer, Matt Kelly, as well.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, my final question, or no, it's not my second.
Ask all you want.
Is really to your one of your personal things that you're doing, which is, of course, you were the author of the Firing Your Hiring Habits.
Yeah.
So putting your hiring habits hat on, John.
All right.
How would you advise young engineers and operators to prepare themselves for a future that's going to include more cobots and automation on the factory floor?
Yeah. First, I would encourage them to learn and embrace as much of the new stuff as they can, whether it's AI in terms of enhancing their capabilities, automation, learn how to use those tools, or even sustainability. So on the sustainability front, this is going to change the landscape of electronics around the world. In fact, to help with that, tomorrow at our opening, at our luncheon, we're announcing a new branding of our sustainability initiatives, and it's going to be called Evolve. And so it's helping the industry continue to evolve, to adapt, and to adopt to all these new regulations, all these new needs and demands from the sustainability industry. So it's giving the industry a place to go on the website where they can learn about, how do I respond to this survey? How do I, there's a dual materiality assessment tool. There's, how do I better prepare for, whatever the requirements are that are coming down on us from the industry and sustainability. So if you're just entering the industry, don't be afraid of the new stuff. Lean into the new stuff. And even if you're long time in the industry, I would be figuring out how to stay more abreast of this latest stuff in terms of automation and AI, because it's just going to make us more effective. It's just new tools that make us better.
It's there as an assist rather than to take your job.
That's right. That's right.
So looking at the sustainability thing, I mean, that's obviously it's gathering momentum. It's saving energy. It's using more environmentally friendly materials, that type of thing. I mean, there's also another aspect coming in, which is the circular economy.
Correct.
And in fact, there's a very interesting thing came out last week there from Apple, offering trade-ins on their
old phones.
Old phones, but on their equipment as well, their computers and things like that. And it was quite fascinating because you type in the serial number of your product, it tells you what they're going to offer you, and then they tell you what the cost of upgrading to the next level is. So my Apple MacBook Pro, they offered me $860 and only $139 to upgrade to an M4 chip from an M1, which is incredible.
Yeah.
But when you think of how they do that, the reason they're doing that is because they're taking back these old computers and then scavenging off, I guess, the reusable parts to rebuild the next one,
Right.
Which is an area I think the industry is maybe moving into.
Yeah, as we lean into sustainability, there's a lot of coordination that has to happen. The challenge with our industry is we don't like making things specifically for just one country, right?
Yep.
When we build things, we build them for the world. And so whichever has the hardest requirements, pretty much everything gets built to that. You know, if you have got an environmental requirement coming out of the EU, well, the US and Asia is going to get the same product to that requirement because we don't want to build it twice or three times or 6 times. And so the same is true for making things more sustainable. The challenge with that is that there's things outside of our control. You know, how do you do recycling in the US versus in Germany versus in Malaysia? Each of those recycling requirements right now aren't synchronized. And so we need to be working with the global world and the various industries, because if we can systemize that, we can better build and design electronics to work into even more effective sustainability. But we're making great starts. And we've been doing it for decades, frankly, in how we manufacture. Some of these plants are, you know, they put cleaner water back out than they bring in. Which is fantastic.
Incredible.
It's really wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a fascinating world we live in, John, and I love catching up with you and all our colleagues here at IPC every year.
It's always a pleasure.
And I want to thank you for coming in and talking to us today.
Thank you.
For micro dispensing, there is one product line that is proven and trusted by manufacturers in semiconductor packaging, electronics assembly, medical device, and electromechanical assembly the world over. DL Technology, superior pumps and needles for the finer things in life.